Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Hello, this is Lal from puredhamma.net. There is a root key factor that is really the root cause for tilakkana or anicca, dukkha, anatta nature. That is the unstable and unpredictable nature of things in this world. Nothing in this world lasts forever. Anything is destroyed at some point. Even more importantly, during their existence, all things change unpredictably. So those are the root causes of anicca nature. Now, there is another important thing, which is that we will be subjected to suffering only if we crave for those things that have this anicca nature, this unstable and unpredictable nature. Everything in one's world is included in the 5 aggregates or the panchakkhanda. However, unless one craves for them or forms pancha upadana khanda, then one will not be subjected to suffering. That is why the 5 aggregates are like a bottle of poison. One will be subjected to suffering only if one drinks from that bottle of poison. That is the difference between the 5 aggregates or the panchakhanda and the pancha upadana khanda, the craving for the 5 aggregates. Suffering is built into panchakhanda, but one will not be subjected to suffering unless one gets attached to the panchakhanda or the 5 aggregates. Another important factor is that whenever we crave for those worldly things, we violate one or more of dasa akusala, and that is how we really get into trouble. This is the second key factor to keep in mind. We commit dasa akusala because we crave for things in the world, and committing dasa akusala always lead to bad kamma vipaka and thus lead to suffering. When we get attached to those unstable and unpredictable things in this world, we are going to be disappointed sooner or later. When we get attached to those things, we do dasa akusala to get hold of those things. As we will see, those dasa akusala can vary from obvious immoral actions like killing and stealing to just miccha ditti that most people don't pay much attention about. This is why we don't normally see this connection. When we understand the importance of miccha ditti in dasa akusala, we can reduce our cravings for those material things and thereby stop future suffering. The deeper aspect of miccha ditti is actually not understanding the tilakkana. That is what we will be focusing on in this desana. So these 2 factors are very important. This is the key to stop future suffering. Later in the desana, we will start discussing the yatha bhuta jnana, which is the knowledge about how those unstable material things, in particular our physical bodies, come into existence. This is the third key factor. This is the connection between the previous 2 factors that we talked about. One actually gets to the Noble Eightfold Path by removing this deeper layer of miccha ditti, which is the ignorance of tilakkana. When one understands tilakkana, one will have the yatha bhuta jnana as well. So, to put it in other words, yatha bhuta jnana explains how we create those unstable material things by ourselves in the first place, when we act with avidya and do dasa akusala. So this is a never-ending process that feeds on itself. That is how this rebirth process continues. You may want to think about this after listening to the desana. Understanding this is one way to remove Sakkaya Ditthi. In the next desana, we will have more information on this connection. As we discussed in the second desana, the root of the deeper meaning of anicca is stated in a single verse in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the first sutta delivered by the Buddha. It says, Yampiccang nalabati tampi dukkhang, or suffering arises when one does not get what one wants. Of course, it's obvious to anyone that one becomes depressed when one does not get what one wants. On the other hand, many people would say that there are many instances where we do get what we wanted and thus can become happy. But the important thing about the Buddha's message is that he explained that we always end up not getting what we wanted in the long term. If you include the rebirth process, then in each and every case we will be disappointed and be subjected to suffering because what we wanted in the first place, we do not get it. This is the deeper aspect of the Buddha's message. And when one starts understanding that, one will be able to remove Sakkaya Ditthi. In fact, understanding this critical phase is the key to removal of all three Sangyojana that are blocking the Sotapanna stage. Those three are, of course, Sakkaya Ditthi, Vicikiccha, and Silabbata Paramasa. When one really understands the fact that craving for things in this world always lead to suffering, one realizes that there is nothing in this world that's worthwhile craving for. That is the removal of Sakkaya Ditthi. Now, that understanding makes it clear to anyone how to respond to all these sense inputs without any hesitation. And that is the removal of Vicikiccha. And then one realizes that just by living a moral life, one cannot stop future suffering. And that is the removal of Silabbata Paramasa. You have to have that connection or the Yathabhuta Jnana about how these unstable and unpredictable things come into existence in our own minds. You may want to hit the pause button and think about that. If you have listened to the previous three desanas, things may start becoming clear. So we again go to that summary statement from the first desana. If something eventually leads to suffering, even if it brings immediate happiness, that is of anicca nature. In other words, Yampiccang nalabati tampi dukkhang always leads to suffering. That is because in the long run, we can never get what we wanted because of the first key factor that we discussed. Anything in this world is unstable and has the viparinama nature or the tendency to change unpredictably. The five aggregates are inherently of anicca nature because of that. If we get attached to them, we will be subjected to suffering. This is why in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, right after the verse Yampiccang nalabati tampi dukkhang, comes the verse Sankittena panca upadana khandha dukkha, which means cravings for the five aggregates is the cause of suffering. So today we will talk about just cravings involving the rupa khandha or the material objects, and specifically the attachment to one's own body. This is a big part of Sakkaya Ditthi. There are several posts on the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta in the Sutta interpretation section. You may want to read those. So we see that our suffering has roots in the unstable and unpredictable nature of things in this world. When one fully understands this, one is said to have the Yathabhuta Jnana, or the wisdom about the real nature of things. But to see that bigger picture, we need to see how our actions based on our attachment to such things lead to suffering. For that, we have to understand the laws of karma and that those are enforced not only in this life but in future lives as well. We have talked about how a fish biting that tasty bait on a hook will be subjected to suffering without exception. In the same way, one who craves for sense pleasures will be subjected to suffering in the long term. There are no exceptions. This is the key message of the Buddha. A normal human can only see happiness in sense pleasures. The Buddha explained that there are hidden dangers in those sense pleasures. Now this appears to be a very depressing statement. But in fact, this is the best message that anyone ever hear, because this is the key to stop future suffering. When we understand that all future suffering arises because of our cravings, we know what to do to stop that future suffering. Of course, it is not an easy thing to do. Even a Sotapanna who has comprehended this fact may have a hard time implementing it and to get to the Anagami stage. Here we need to understand that this is not merely the suffering that we are aware of. For example, due to body aches and pains and having a depressed mind. This is also about stopping unimaginable suffering in the animal or even lower realms in future rebirths. That is the most important aspect of future suffering. Okay, so now in order to set up this background, we need to take a careful look at the nature of material things that we crave so much in this world. It is impossible to get an idea about the Yathabhuta Jnana in general until we realize the true nature of our own physical bodies. A human has what is called a Ghana Sanya, or the perception of a solid body that he or she considers to be one's own. Now, Ghana means solid or dense. There are two dangers associated with that Ghana Sanya. One thinks that my body is me, so one gets depressed when the body becomes subjected to all kinds of sufferings, or even when the body starts changing due to old age. The other thing is that we don't realize that this body is just a temporary shelter that we have for about, say, 100 years. That is really negligible in the time scale of the rebirth process. We need to worry much more about our mental body or the Gandhabba, and even that will change after at most a few thousand years when we switch over to another existence. For example, maybe to a Deva existence or even to an animal existence. We don't know. That is what we really need to focus on. First, we need to make sure that we will not be reborn in an apaya like in the animal realm. When we do that by getting to the Sotapanna stage, then at that point we will realize that suffering does not end until we put a stop to this whole rebirth process. So it is essential that we take a long-term view. Most of us just want to worry about getting through the day or the rest of the week. So we just go along with the rat race. Then before we even realize, we are at an old age and our brains are not functioning as well as they used to. Then it will be too late to do anything about this problem. And that is what we have been doing for a beginning that cannot be traced back to. We need to take care of this problem right now in this life. In order to get an idea about how our physical body comes to existence, let us think about how a large oak tree arises. You may notice that I use the word arise and not created or even appeared. The Pali word is udaya. Most things just don't pop up into existence. They take time to arise and get to their peak state. For example, an oak tree arises from a tiny seed. It takes years for that little bud that comes out of the seed to grow to a huge tree. Furthermore, 99.999% of the material in that huge oak tree comes from the ground. It wasn't in the seed. The tiny bud that comes out of the seed grows roots, and those roots start taking in water and all kinds of nutrients from the ground. Almost all of the oak tree was built from that material that the roots extracted from the surrounding soil. So you may want to stop and think about this for a minute. That seed basically only had the blueprint for the tree. In the same way, our essence is really the Gandhabba, or our mental body. That Gandhabba descended to our mother's womb at the moment of conception. When a Gandhabba enters a mother's womb, it has the blueprint for the physical body. So just like that tiny oak seed gave rise to a large oak tree, that Gandhabba, which cannot even be seen, has given rise to this large physical body weighing hundreds of pounds or tens of kilograms. First, it merged with a single cell formed by the union of father and mother. Then it started taking nutrients from the mother to gain a few pounds. After coming out of the mother's body, a baby would grow to a full-blown adult by eating food. So again, 99.999% of what we call me or my body is just inert food. You may want to hit the pause button and think about a little bit on this point. That is the starting point in removing the Ghana Sanya and also Sakkaya Ditthi. Now we can begin to see why the knowledge about the nature of material things is called Yatha Bhuta Jnana. In reality, the essence of any living being, large or small, can be reduced to that Gandhabba, or the mental body. It can be called a Bhuta, or a ghost, since it cannot be seen. In the word Yatha Bhuta, Yatha means the real nature, and Bhuta means this ghostly nature, or that cannot be really seen by anyone but a Buddha. It is at the Suddhashtaka level. This Gandhabba is at the Suddhashtaka level, which is million times smaller than an atom in modern science. So it is doubtful that science will ever get to probe that deep into the state of matter. In fact, Brahmas in Brahma realms have very fine bodies, similar in size to that of a Gandhabba, a human Gandhabba. One would not be able to see a Brahma even with the most sophisticated instrument available today. Those bodies are of the size of a Suddhashtaka. So unless a Buddha comes to this world, we will never know about the Gandhabba or the Suddhashtaka stage of matter. Such things can only be seen by a well-purified mind of a Buddha. Now, as soon as the Gandhabba leaves the body will show its true nature. It is inert like a piece of wood. For example, one could be having fun with some friends and the next moment may fall dead due to a heart attack. So in an instant, the Gandhabba had come out of that body and the body has become inert within a split second. Now if we take an ant, it has a Gandhabba too. And our Gandhabba is not any larger than the Gandhabba of an ant. It is just more advanced than the Gandhabba of an ant. Of course, a human Gandhabba may become an ant Gandhabba in the next existence, and vice versa. Of course, there are much smaller microscopic creatures, smaller than ants, that we cannot even see with our eyes. These days we can see such tiny creatures using microscopes. But their Gandhabbas are again the same size as ours. It is just that our Gandhabbas are more advanced. So we can get an idea of how small our Gandhabas are. If those bodybuilders who value their large bodies so much really understand that their physical bodies are actually controlled by a tiny Gandhabba, they would not be so proud of their huge bodies. And of course, those big and impressive bodies would not last very long. So that is one of the two aspects that we mentioned about the reality of nature. We have a wrong perception of Gana Sanya about our bodies, and that is why we give it so much attention. Instead, we should really give our spiritual body or the mental body, Gandhabba, much more attention and try to improve our mental body so that we don't become an ant or worse in the next life. We all like to maintain this physical body in its peak form forever. We want it to look good, and we also want it to perform in its peak state. However, with old age, we will lose not only the beauty but also the performance. Some people use expensive surgical procedures to make sagging body parts firm and beautiful. However, any improvement will not last long. In the end, it all goes downhill, and that cannot be stopped. Of course, an injury or sickness can make that happen even at a younger age. The more we crave and try to keep up with the failing body by artificial means, the harder it will be for the mind to deal with the realities of old age and any unexpected problems like injuries and diseases. So it is good to think about these facts ahead of the time. Now I do want to emphasize that we do need to maintain a good exercise program and also to eat healthy in order to keep the body in good condition. But we also need to keep in mind that aging of the body and its eventual death is inevitable. The worst aspect of this is the weakening of the brain. We must make progress on the noble path before the brain becomes less and less functional, or in the worst case, gets something like Alzheimer's disease. We also need to keep in mind that the Gandhabba or the mental body is much more long-lasting or long-lived than the physical body. As you may remember, we get this mental body for the human bhava or the human existence, which could last thousands of years. Within that time, we will be reborn with the human body many times. Of course, we don't know whether each one of us is at the early stage of the human bhava or close to the end. This could even be the last birth as a human in this human existence. We just don't know. So we should make efforts assuming the worst case of this being the last human birth in this human bhava. So this is one aspect of the anicca nature. We will not be able to maintain our physical body to our liking, no matter what we do. When we start comprehending that, our Gana Sanya will decrease. That will also help get rid of Sakkaya Ditthi, which is basically the idea that we can become happy by doing whatever is needed to provide the body with sense pleasures. Now let us expand the discussion to other types of rupa in this world, other than our physical bodies. All rupa in this world are called sankhata, because they are all put together by the mind with sun. Now sankhata comes from two words, sun and kata, which basically means created by sun. We know that sun is a key word in Buddha Dhamma. There is a subsection at the website on sun, spelled S-A-N. Whatever comes to existence in this world lives for a certain finite time and then undergoes decay and death after an initial prime stage. The arising of a sankhata is called udaya, and the destruction of a Sankata is called Vaya. There is a subsection on Udaya Vaya Jnana